Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're going to be doing our check-in video for the month of January. Usually I do it around the 15th. This time we're doing it around the 20th because that would make it like between the beginning of the year, like the TBR, and the end of the year video for the abbreviated month of January that we did this year. So, yeah, let's just jump into it. I don't really have too much to say about myself or the channel right now, so... yeah, in terms of my watch list, I watched Harry Potter 2, the Chamber of Secrets with my cousins. It was pretty good. I enjoy it a lot. I really enjoy Harry Potter. The Chamber of Secrets is not really my favorite movie. I like the third one, and maybe the fifth one the best. But I do actually enjoy the Chamber of Secrets book quite a bit. And I'm not really sure why I like one and not the other, but I do. So, yeah, after that, I watched One Piece, the live-action show. I watched this basically for the fourth time, maybe at this point. Maybe it's the third time. I can't remember. But it is a show that I've watched multiple times. It is definitely a comfort show for me now. But I watched this for this time because I was sharing it with my parents. I wanted my family to experience One Piece in some way because they're never going to watch the anime because it's too long, obviously. And they're never going to read the manga because my dad doesn't like comic books and my mom can't be bothered to read in English, right? So unless I got her Mexican editions and then like made sure that she would read them, there is no way for my parents, either of them, to consume One Piece, right? The live action is perfect for that. It is an avenue through which they can experience a version of my favorite story ever, and I can share with them. And I'm very happy I did because they actually really ended up enjoying it. We watched it in Spanish, so the dubbing is not horrible, but it is not as good. A lot of the funny elements of One Piece definitely felt lesser. A lot of the scenes that made me chuckle and made me feel happy and enjoy the dialogue in English just weren't there in Spanish. However, there were some positives. Like, for example, I got to hear Iñaki Godoy's Mexican voice, his voice when he speaks his native tongue. And also, I got to see and hear Taz Skylar speak Spanish in his Canary Island accent, which is nice. And as far as I remember, they used the voice actors that are the anime voice actors from Mexico. So there was some element of nostalgia there because when I did watch One Piece as a child, and before I knew what the heck One Piece really was, I remember watching a few episodes of it when I went to Mexico. We didn't have cable, so I just had to watch whatever was on the national broadcast channel, which had a segment for children. And the two things that I remember very vividly from the morning segment of those experiences was definitely Thundercats, which is why I love Thundercats now, and One Piece. But I wasn't really interested in One Piece until I started this channel, right? And so it's been a very long time coming, but it all kind of went full circle, and it was kind of interesting in that sense. But the One Piece live action show is phenomenal. Is it perfect? No. Does it improve a lot on the early elements of One Piece? In my opinion, yes. I think that changing the way the story is written slightly to make it more similar to later arcs in terms of structure is brilliant. I don't love that they cut so many side characters, but I also understand why they did so. And I actually really enjoy how they wove in Kobe's story into the live action. I do think now, because I didn't before, think that the rationale for Garp following Luffy around was not explained the best, but it is forgivable because it is such a simple premise and such an understandable premise that I think it's fine that they didn't bother explaining that or making that clear as well as they could have, right? So even though there are some issues, I do find it that overall it was pretty great. My current rating for it would be a 9 out of 10. And that's actually what my parents gave it as well. I asked them, hey, did you enjoy the show? They said yes. And then I asked them, what did you think about it? Like, if you had to give it a rating, my mom was like, immediately she said 9 out of 10. It was pretty fun. I like Luffy a lot. And my dad took a little bit longer to kind of think about it, but eventually he did land on like an 8.5 or 9 out of 10. He also enjoyed it quite a bit, and he also loved Luffy. I think he also really liked Zoro. He thought he was a fun character. And my mom liked Nami quite a bit. My sister thought the show was a little bit cringy, and I think that it definitely is cringy. But my sister is a little bit more like too cool for school in terms of her attitude and stuff. And she also has this kind of like bias where she doesn't really love things that come from comic books and manga unless it's certain Marvel movies, right? So her opinion is definitely valid, but she was coming in with like the idea that she wasn't gonna like it already. So it's not like you gotta take it with a grain of salt, right? The funny thing is that her roommate actually had her watch some of the episodes, and she actually did like some of them. She really liked the Buggy's episode, the second episode, and I think she also really liked the episode with Mihawk. So that's pretty good. Overall, she did enjoy some of it, but she did say ultimately that it was a little bit too cringy for her taste, which is kind of ridiculous because I've seen the stuff she watches, and it's also really freaking ridiculous and cringy, but in a different way, right? So yeah, then I watched Rebel Moon, and I actually had fun with it. I will be releasing a pair of videos about Rebel Moon and Percy Jackson tomorrow, the day after this releases on YouTube, explaining my thoughts on them. So for Rebel Moon, I basically feel like the marketing or the idea that was pushed by pundits and by people that talk about movies to other people that talk about movies on YouTube, thinking and saying that it's going to be the next Star Wars, was the wrong approach because it set up expectations that were not ever going to be met, because nothing can capture lightning in a bottle the same way Star Wars did, because anything that comes after Star Wars that is like Star Wars is going to be derivative, right? Star Wars is derivative in many ways, but it is so well hidden that it doesn't matter, right? It was a genre-defining, genre-shifting, like storm captured at the right moment in the right time for the right people, perfectly, right? At least the first Star Wars movie. And nothing is ever going to really be like that, right? James Cameron tried to make his own Star Wars with Avatar. He didn't succeed. Avatar is a very successful franchise, but that's because it costs twice as much to go watch it than it does any other movie, right? Because of the 3D elements, right? Nothing is ever going to match Star Wars in terms of its like cultural revolution / importance to pop culture, right? And trying to set up something as the next Star Wars is dooming it to fail. And I think that's really what happened here with Rebel Moon, because if he had not gone in with that idea, you would have probably thought that this is, like Firefly or like Star Wars, but obviously to a lesser degree in a lesser form. And if that was the case, if people went in with that idea, I feel like they would have enjoyed this quite a lot more. That's basically the idea with which I went into watching this, and I found it to be entertaining. My parents also found it to be pretty entertaining. My mom, someone who notoriously falls asleep during sci-fi movies, was awake the whole time. She was very dialed in. She was really interested in what's going on. She liked the movie quite a lot. My sister was, in and out. She didn't really care too much. My dad also found it to be pretty enjoyable. And I think it's because whether you agree with it or not, or whether you look at it positively or negatively, Zack Snyder is very open about what he is trying to tell you, right? Like, this movie is about rebels in a certain way, but it's actually more like a group of people fighting for their village, right? It's like a little Polish village gets invaded by Nazis. So one of the people that used to be a Nazi that moved to this Polish village now has to go find other warriors to help her defend this new village that took her in. And it is what it is. It's cool, but it's not very substantial. Like, it doesn't have depth to go along with the spectacle of it all. But if you're just in for a good time, just to enjoy 2 hours of ridiculous shit happening on the screen, you're gonna enjoy this movie. And I really did. Maybe that makes me easily entertained. I don't really care. I think it was fun and enjoyable, and I can't wait for part 2. But it is not the greatest thing ever. It is maybe a very good middling movie, and I'm very happy with that, right? I'm not going to be a mega fan. I'm not going to go buy model kits or sculptures or anything to do with this unless I find them, at a discount price. But basically, that's how I buy everything that I buy anyway. So it doesn't really make too much of a difference for me. And yeah, I also watched Percy Jackson. And I'm going to mention this in my video tomorrow, so I don't want to get too deep into it. But I don't think that this show is hitting the way that I was expecting it to. And I don't know if it's hitting everyone the same way. Like, I haven't really dialed in onto who thinks what about Percy Jackson, because Percy Jackson was a series that meant a lot to me as a kid, especially the Son of Neptune, the second book in the second Percy Jackson series, was one of my favorite books growing up. And it's one that I've probably read a lot. Like, I distinctly remember so many scenes from that book, like Percy starting his journey with no memory, going through this, fighting some harpies, and then Athena, or Juno in this case, telling him to go somewhere, and he has to carry her across a lake or like a ravine or something. He gets into Camp Jupiter. He gets immediately, met with them. He meets Hazel, I think, and Frank, and he ends up hanging out with them. There's a scene where he goes to Hades' house or temple or whatever, and it's this little creepy place. Terminus, I think, is the god of boundaries or whatever. Like, there's so many things from that book that live rent-free in my mind. It is one of my favorite books ever. But that is an older book. Like, the character and the stuff that is dealt with in that book is for slightly older audiences. And it's been many, many years since I went back to read Percy Jackson. And when I started watching the show, I was comparing it constantly to the movie, and I feel like the movie was better. And I don't think that is actually true. I just think my memories of the movie were better than what I was expecting, or better than what I actually got from the show. And I think that is a shame, and I think that's bad. And I also think that it's ultimately because I've outgrown Percy Jackson without realizing it, because it's not something that you actively think about, right? And the story feels very simple, and also not really well paced, because I don't mention this in the video, so I'm going to mention it now, but it is at the same time very fast and very slow. It feels like the episodes don't really focus on the fights. Those fights happen really quickly, very kind of almost like blink and you miss it, especially in the first couple episodes. And all of the character stuff, it's thrown at you very, very quickly, and I feel like the pacing is rough for the show. I think that things are happening both too fast and too slow at the same time, and I think that is a big problem. However, the book or the show is being a lot more accurate to the books, and I do appreciate that from a perspective of consistency and internal logic and appreciation for the people that worked on this. But I don't know, something just doesn't hit, and I think it's me. I think that I have outgrown them, right? So I watched the show. I watched all the way to episode 6, and I watch it with the sense of sadness and content at the same time, and contentment. And I'm very perplexed by this. I don't know. I feel very weird about the situation. So maybe I'll do more videos about it later on. Then I watched Berlin season 1. This is a Money Heist spinoff. It's a prequel show. Showing you another heist that Berlin made without the professor, or without his brother. I can't remember his real name. I think his name is Angel or something. But it's a pretty good show. However, Berlin, because I watched the show in its original Spanish, is not a character that I think manages to work well as the main character. He is a really great secondary character, and I don't think that they managed to hit those notes properly in this, because he is the main character this time. And although the actor, Alonso something, I can't remember his last name, definitely has the gravitas of a great actor, of a great centerpiece, the character itself, Berlin, doesn't really seem like the character that I'm ultimately rooting for, and that's weird that yes, the premise is that these people are not good, right? But they are still the protagonist, and ultimately you want to root for the protagonist. And I can't say that I do, but when it comes to Berlin, like, he is a twisted ass motherfucker, but he's not enticing in the way that he was in Money Heist, and I'm not really sure why that is. I did like the side characters a lot. There was this hacker girl that had some like social anxiety issues. I really liked her as a character. She basically hits all of the notes that I like. She was, intelligent and pretty, and she had social anxiety, so it was interesting to see her navigate the reality of her world outside of her comfort zone. And her romance with one of the male characters was quite good. I actually really enjoyed it. I also liked the other two young characters that were there quite a bit. So I like the show, but I just don't think it hit the same way Money Heist did. Because if you watch Money Heist and you really get invested in the show, it's fucking phenomenal, right? And Berlin just never manages to get there. So those are my thoughts on that. I also want to mention this musical that I found on YouTube. It's called Epic. It's basically like what Hamilton is to American history. Epic is to the Odyssey, right? So, and actually I think it also involves the Iliad as well. So this guy, his name is like Jorge Herrera or something. I think he's from California. He decided to make a musical about the Odyssey and the Iliad, and I really love it. I think it's phenomenal. I listened to the whole thing, or to all three of the LPs that are out right now, which are the first half of the story. And I went down the rabbit hole a little bit. And basically this is like a crowdfunded musical. It's basically done thanks to just a bunch of random singers on YouTube being willing to lend their voices. And this guy is just doing it because he thinks it's really cool. And I really love it because I feel a lot of influence from television and video game music, John Williams and stuff that I've listened to in video games, and also a lot of Hamilton and rock music. And I really love that. I think it sounds really, really awesome. I really enjoy how this musical is. And I'm not really a musical type of guy. I like Hamilton a lot, but the more I listen to it, the more I'm like, okay, this is not as good as I really thought back in the day. But just something about Lin-Manuel Miranda's story, and the way that his story also is reflective of the story that Alexander Hamilton kind of went through, really appealed to me when I was in high school when I found it, and through university when I was going through some struggles myself, right? So I like Hamilton a lot, but I don't like it as much now as I used to, and I really enjoy this music. I thought it was really, really interesting, right? So it's not really part of the channel, but it relates to books and stuff since it's based on them, so I wanted to mention it. So that's it for the watch list. Now let's go over what I've been reading. So let's move on to what I've been reading. So I finally finished The Coming of Conan the Cimmerian, which is a great book. I really, really enjoyed it. Most of the stories are phenomenal. Let me look and see through this and see if I can tell you which ones are my favorites and which ones I didn't really like too much. So The Phoenix on the Sword is a pretty good story. It's a good introduction, but it's not really my favorite. I think that it is not necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily the best here. The Frost Giant's Daughter is phenomenal, but it is kind of rough. It is not long enough or very deep enough that it really is Robert E. Howard's best work, but it is definitely a very important one, right? So yeah, The Tower of the Elephant is probably my favorite story. When he meets Yog Kosha, or whatever his name is, the elephant man that is an alien and also kind of maybe a cosmic entity, is awesome. I love that story a lot. The Queen of the Black Coast is a seminal story. It shows you Conan's true love, the one woman that he actually loves deeply and honestly, and the struggles that kind of come from that are pretty good. Even though you don't see them because they're not exactly chronological, the stories aren't exactly chronological, you understand him more deeply when you realize that some of the stories are after this, and you realize that he is a lot more melancholic than he really used to be when he was a younger man. Black Colossus is pretty interesting. I don't really remember exactly what happened, but I do remember I liked that story. Zuthal of the Dusk is probably the second best story in this book. So it's Tower of the Elephant, then Zuthal of the Dusk, then Queens of the Black Coast for me right now. And I think that The Devil in Iron is also pretty good now that I'm looking at this list, the way it's penned out here. The only story here that I didn't really love is The Veil of Lost Women, and that is mostly because of the racial undertones that are so prevalent in this. However, there are some really great ideas that really remind me of Burroughs, right? Of Edgar Rice Burroughs. And that is really interesting because this is like an ode or a homage to a writer that influenced Robert E. Howard, right? So the genealogy or the family tree of epic fantasy and fantasy in general, of awesome fantasy stories, directly ties Burroughs into Robert E. Howard, into Robert Jordan, into whoever else later through The Veil of the Lost Women very clearly. However, it is sad that this story is so racist compared to all of the other ones, right? It's also very inconsistent in terms of characterizing Conan compared to all the other ones. So it is definitely the weakest story in this book. Yeah, I don't know. Overall, great stuff. I mean, that's only one story out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 1 out of 13. Did I count that right? Let me see. 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah, 13. So 1 out of 13 is pretty good. Like, only 1 is bad out of 13 awesome, or 13 pretty good stories is good. And 5 of them being phenomenal out of, 13 pretty good ones is pretty great. Like, I think that this is really, really good. So I can't wait to pick up more Conan. However, I do think I'm going to take a little bit of a break from Conan and go back to reading Cole so I can finish Cole, because I kind of left that one to the wayside. And then when Sumerian September, I went right into Conan, and it only took me like 4 months to finish it. But, it is what it is. Really good stuff. I do recommend you guys check this out because it is the seminal text to fantasy, right? So, yeah, there you go. That's Conan. That's the only novel I've read so far. So moving on to manga here. Actually, no, let's do comic books first. So let's talk about the comic books that I had from last year that I read this month. Here's Transformers number 3, which is awesome. I love Transformers, and I love what Daniel Warren Johnson is doing with them. Rogue Sun number, what's this one? Let's see, 17. This was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. There was kind of a little bit of a lull for Rogue Sun, but it's back, and it's firing on all cylinders, and I really like that. This is Sacrificers number 5, and this is a pretty good penultimate episode or penultimate issue for this part of the series. But I'm not really sure that I like that series that much. Like, now that I've read the 6th one, which I'll show you guys in a bit, I'm not really sure how I feel about this series, right? So, yeah, here's Sheena number 4. This one is actually also a penultimate issue, and it's also pretty good. I enjoyed it. I think the artwork kind of got better around issue 3. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's just my imagination based on the fact that he draws more, like appealing female figures in issues 3 onward or not. I'm not really sure, but I like the artwork more, even though I think I said that I didn't like it all that much. Here's Saint Seiya Time Odyssey number 3. This was a pretty good issue that focused on Ikki, or what's he called in the Knights of the Zodiac movie? I don't know, actually. But yeah, Ikki, a Phoenix, really good stuff. This is Blue Beetle number 4, and I actually really enjoyed this one as well. There's some sort of romance here, although this makes it seem like there's a very serious romance, when really I think it's just mostly a joke that gets played on Jaime in that issue, right? So that's the first couple comic books that I read this month. Then I read, let's see, Unnatural number 2, which was awesome. I really enjoyed what happened here. I think it's really, really cool. Wonder Woman number 4, which is also phenomenal. I love this series right now. I love the artwork. I think Tom King is doing really interesting stuff. And this one I actually really liked a lot. I almost cried during one of the panels because it's just this beautiful story about like how loving Wonder Woman is and how she is willing to take her time to hang out with this young boy that has cancer that is like her biggest fan, right? And I really enjoyed or thought it was interesting that they used a male character for the scene and for this issue. it doesn't really exactly tie into the story directly, at least I don't think it does, but it was a great issue nonetheless. I really enjoyed everything that happened in it. I was very happy. I was kind of like sad, but smiling the whole time reading this, and I really enjoy what Tom King is doing with this. Now, I'm not necessarily sure Tom King is a writer for me outside of Wonder Woman, but I'm willing to give him more of a chance because I have really enjoyed what he's doing with Wonder Woman, right? So, yeah, here we have Green Arrow number 7. This was pretty good, although I think this was advertised as like Oliver Queen back from the dead and right for Walter's throat, and he didn't really go after her. He was mostly just kind of like spying on his friends to an extent, and I'm not really sure why they sold it that way because like it's very blatant lying, and I don't think advertising necessarily has to be completely honest because that is not the point of it, but it just felt really ridiculous to kind of point at this idea that, you know, Oliver's going directly for Waller's jugular when he really isn't even ready to fight her yet. So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that, but it was a good issue nonetheless. Here's Hexagon Bridge number 4. There was some really interesting stuff happening here. The artwork is phenomenal, but as always, this is not the right size for this book, and I hate that. I think it's a problem. And I really wish that they would fix that, maybe when they do the trade, right? So, yeah, then we have Blue Beetle number 5. I actually really enjoyed this one, although I think some of the characters were off-model in this, and I don't know if that's actually true or if it was just me not understanding what the heck they were doing. I'm not really sure. I think they were off-model. I'm going to go with that interpretation, but they're gearing up for war in this one, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. I'm not really sure how long Blue Beetle's going to run. I really hope it goes like 20 issues, as long as, you know, Josh Trujillo and... what's the artist's name? Jaime Gutierrez, I think is his name. I can't remember his first name, but as long as Gutierrez and Trujillo and Quintana can continue to do great stuff, I really hope that they go on for at least 20 issues. I do want to have like the chance to collect a Trujillo and Gutierrez, you know, omnibus for Blue Beetle, right? I hope that that happens. Here we have another Vault title. This was given to me for free again. Vault basically gives the first issues of some of their series to comic book stores, and comic book stores can decide to sell them or give them out for free. My comic book store just gives them to me for free, hoping that I will pick up the series and buy it. But in this case, I'm not really sure that I am interested in this one. It's kind of this sort of like Matrix-y kind of thing. And it was a really interesting concept, but I don't think that I would be satisfied reading it month to month. And so I think it's better for me to wait for a trade for that one. So, yeah. Then we have Sacrificers number 6. And this was a really interesting end. There was a plot twist in issue 5. The plot twist continued in issue 6. And the story basically ends with the main character, the bird kid, basically kind of going off on his own after managing to escape. It reminds me a lot of Unwind, if you guys ever saw or read that series. And I don't hate it, but it's kind of weird. Like, I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I feel like I should have felt a lot with that final page in that issue, and I don't think I did. I don't think I really had much of a reaction, and I don't think that that is good. So we'll see how I feel about it after I reread the whole thing in one go, right? So, yeah, then here we have No One number 7. I'm honestly just kind of writing this out, hoping that it eventually gets really, really good, because so far I've had, you know, a good time with some of the issues and also been so bored in some other ones. This one was kind of a middling issue. I'm not really sure that this kind of genre, whatever this is, it's not really noir, but it's not really like action thriller either. It's somewhere like in between, not really hitting any of those, but not really like it feels almost soap opera-y, like soap opera-y, but it's this issue just didn't hit, and I'm not really sure why that is. I'd have to analyze it more. I have to think about it more, but I also just don't feel like doing that. So I think that it's just not the right fit for me. And at this point, I just don't want to stop collecting it because it's 7 out of 10 issues. Like, there is no reason for me to quit now, right? So, yeah, sunk cost fallacy all the way, I guess. Here's Rebel Moon number 1. This is a prequel story. I initially ordered this because I thought I was going to really love Rebel Moon, and I don't hate it, but I don't really love it as much as I thought I would. Because even though I didn't fall into the trap of thinking that it was going to be the next Star Wars, I did think that it was going to be a lot better than it was. Now, did it really affect me negatively that it wasn't? Not really, not at all. Obviously, I spent quite a bit talking about that earlier in this video, so you guys are aware of my thoughts on that. But I will continue to read this because I actually found this to be pretty enjoyable. Like, regardless of whether it's tied to Rebel Moon or not, it is an interesting look at a sci-fi space empire that is murdering people for no freaking reason, and what that does to the people that are being affected, right? Like, overall, I find that story interesting and compelling, and I liked what I saw in this issue, so I'm going to continue to collect it, even though I'm not the biggest Rebel Moon fan at all, right? So, yeah, and then Wonder Woman number 5. I actually really liked this issue a lot. I watched a video earlier today talking about how this was a really boring issue, and I can't disagree more. I really enjoyed this. I'm a fan of Wonder Woman primarily because of the movie, and primarily because I really enjoyed her as a character in cartoons, right? But I've never really delved really deeply into Wonder Woman's stories yet. I mean, I do have some that I want to read, but I just haven't gone around to them. And so a lot of what Tom King is doing here is setting up a really good understanding for a new reader for Wonder Woman. And I think that he managed to do that very well here, to introduce you to all of her, you know, evil characters, her really important bad guy characters, her rogues gallery, and also show you the relationship she has with her sidekick characters, right? Yara Flor is very interesting in concept, but I don't think that she's a character I care too much about. Cassie, the tomboy girl, was pretty cool, but I really liked Donna Troy's interpretation here. I found it to be phenomenal. I really like how her suit looks with the black with the bright, shiny white stars. And I really love the relationship that they all have. Although, I do want to say that I think that Tom King was going for a mother/older sister role for a lot of these scenes. And some of them, to me, really felt more like sapphic, like as in, like, slightly bordering on lesbian. And I don't really care too much either way, but I don't think that he hit correctly. Now, maybe that's my personal problem. Like, there is something where I interpret it incorrectly. But I really feel like the way that those images and dialogue was framed really could be either or. And I don't think there is a problem if it's both. But there is definitely like I'm sure, you know, Wonder Woman superfans will definitely have a problem with that take. So I'm not really sure how I feel about it, but I found that I liked either interpretation quite well, whether if it was a little bit like lesbian feeling or if it was just completely like motherly and I just misread it. I don't really care either way. I liked both interpretations, and I found the issue to be phenomenal. I really enjoy the Tom King Wonder Woman run a lot. So yeah, then I reread Sonya number 5. Read Sonya number 5. This is the 50th anniversary series by Thorun Grönbeck. And I don't know. I feel like I read this. Like, I know I read this, but I could only remember half of the issue. And that's kind of weird. I've never had that happen to me so, like, vividly and clearly. And I also just feel like it's not hitting the way I thought it would. Like, the first issue was phenomenal. I really enjoyed that issue. And I thought that Thorun Grönbeck was going to be able to do something really interesting with Sonya. And that was true for a while, but now I feel like the story is going too slowly. And I'm not really sure how I feel about it. And, you know something? If I had read this independently of the Conan series, like, they are independent. They are not tied together, right? But Conan and Red Sonja are characters that are both Robert E. Howard characters. And Red Sonja and Conan are both sword and sorcery style stories that happen in the same esque world, right? They both are in the Hyborian Age to different extents. And, you know, the Conan run with Jim Sub right now is awesome. Like, I don't like the artwork for the second arc all that much, but it's like firing on all cylinders. And the Red Sonja feels like it's pitter-pattering. Like, it's not really there yet. Like, it's almost there, and like, it's reaching for greatness, and it's just not getting there. And I'm not really sure why, compounded with the fact that I really like the character visually. I really find her aesthetic and her style interesting, and what the character kind of represents interesting as well. But I have not found any series, any story that manages to actually provide me with what I want out of her. Kind of sucks. And this just feels like a continuous issue that I have, and I'm not really sure why. Like, it should not be that hard to write female Conan, which she's not technically. There's enough differences between her and Conan that it shouldn't just be female Conan. But I feel like it shouldn't be that. Like if people can manage to make awesome Conan series, they should also be able to manage to do awesome Red Sonja series. And I'm not really sure why it feels like they're failing, at least from my perspective, right? So it is what it is. Now we get to the really good stuff here. I have Ultimate Spider-Man #1, which I loved. I thought it was great. I really enjoy this kind of like introspective like thing. I've been watching a lot of Sal from Comic Pop, and his take on this is that this is, you know, Spider-Man for millennials, showing you what millennials feel. I'm not a millennial. I'm actually a Gen Z. I'm 24 though, so I'm kind of like on the older end of Gen Z, and so I do kind of identify with some of the millennial struggles, right? Like, I understand that feeling of like, my life isn't going the way I want it to, I'm waiting for it to start, and it just never does, kind of feelings, and I think that a lot of people my age feel like that too, especially post-COVID. But I also really enjoyed it because I find it to be interesting and refreshing. Now, I'm not necessarily a lifelong Spider-Man fan, but I've seen enough and known enough about Spider-Man that I know that this is different, that I know that this is interesting, and that I'm very invested in seeing where it goes. I really like this adult take on Spider-Man. I think it's nice to see a superhero that's also a real person to an extent, right? Someone that has a wife and kids and a family, and he's interested in their lives, and he also has his own problems, but he doesn't want to necessarily deal with them by himself because he has a support system, right? Like, I really enjoy all of those aspects, and I loved this issue. I was very invested in it, and the most interesting part about this was that there was no Spider-Man. There was no Spider-Man action in this, and I was still super engaged. Like, I really liked that. I think that Jonathan Hickman did a good job with this. I'm not necessarily chomping at the bit for more Jonathan Hickman stuff. Like, I don't really care about X-Men or his Fantastic Four stuff, but I might check it out if I like how this run goes. And I'm also curious to see where this is going. Like, is this going to be something like this other one, this other Ultimate Spider-Man, or not? Something that lasts, you know, a decade? I doubt it. I don't think that Hickman is interested in doing that, but maybe 25 issues would be pretty good. You know, 40, 50 issues would be pretty nice. I think that would be really phenomenal. And I think that there is a lot of stuff to do here. Deal with, you know, the emergence of these supervillains and this kind of very different lifestyle from an adult perspective, right? So I think that's interesting. I really like this. I thought it was very nice. Conan the Barbarian #6. I like the art style in this cover, but I don't really understand what the cover is trying to go for. And I like the issue quite a bit. I really enjoyed my time with it, but I really don't love the artwork. And I think it's not really the artwork. I think if it was in black and white, I would love it. But I don't like the colors. And I think that it doesn't do any favors for the artwork. So, yeah, it still has this weird, like, yellow shading to it. The greens from the, like, the black stone stuff were good. It managed to offset all of the orange, but it didn't really work well for me. Now, I don't know why it doesn't work, because I love orange, right? Like, I think that orange in comic books is a really good color. I really love how it's been used in things like The Forged and things like Once and Future, but it just doesn't work for me in Conan somehow. I'm not really sure. Also, maybe that's not true. Maybe it's just the way that it's done, like the rendering style, the painting style for the colorist. Because I liked some of the orange and purple stuff in the Conan, like the earlier Conan arc, right? So maybe it's just the colorist that I don't jive with. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on to Transformers #4. This was also really, really good. Man, the Transformers story is just phenomenal. Like, I really enjoy everything that's going on here, and I really, really like what Daniel Warren Johnson is doing. I really need to reread this though, because I remember what I read. I remember my feelings towards what I read. I remember writing down stuff about it so I could do a review, but I don't really remember exactly what happened here. I think they go to a hospital, and Prime sacrifices the Matrix of Leadership in order to provide electricity for the hospital so they can treat his son. Sorry, not Optimus Prime's son, Witwicky's son, which is Spike, right? So I think that's what happened in that issue. And in issue 3, that's when Cliffjumper tries to go talk to the humans and they try to kill him. So never mind, I remember what happened. Sorry. Then we have The Forged here. This is issues 1, 2, and 3. Oops. This is magazine size. This is the size that Hexagon Bridge should be. And I really like this. I think it's really phenomenal. I have another set of 3 issues from this story. This is by Mike Henderson and Greg Rucka and Eric Trotman, I think is his name. I can't remember if it's Eric or something else. But really good stuff. If you like Halo and muscle mommies, you should read this because it's basically muscle mommies in a Dune type world that happen to be like Halo style super soldiers. And it's great. I love it. It has so many crazy, interesting things happening. I love all of the characters. They all happen to be female. Their body types are really interesting. They're not just your standard, supermodel like type character. They're bulky. They're beefy. They got muscles and abs and thickness to them. They're really, really good. I love the mechanical design for the robots. I really enjoy the style of the story. It's a first contact story ultimately, but it's one that doesn't go the way that you would think it goes. And it doesn't also go the way that, negative contact stories usually go. It's really interesting. And I love the colors. Some of the characters have this really interesting Moon Knight-esque kind of coloring to them where everything they have glows. And some of them have very basic kind of neutral colors. And there's a lot of purple and orange and green. And it's so psychedelic almost. I don't know if that's the right word, but it just has so much vibrancy and energy. And it's just so weird. And I love it. I think it's really, really good. So yeah, for muscle mommies in a Dune type setting that happen to be Halo super soldiers, check out The Forged. And then we have Asterix, and this is really different from all of the other comic books that I read. First of all, this is a bande dessinée, a Belgian-French comic, I think. Let me double check that. I'm pretty sure that this is a French-Belgian comic. But I don't want to, say stupid shit. So, yeah, this is definitely a bande dessinée. This is definitely a French-Belgian comic, and it's about this little guy, Asterix here, who is the hero of his Gaulish village, and they're trying to fight off the Roman Empire, and it's supposed to be a really funny comedy, and I only ever see For the Love of Comics talk about this, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It's not necessarily comedy, I didn't laugh out loud at anything. That could be the translation. For the Love of Comics mentions that quite a bit, but for me, the really interesting and intriguing part was the artwork. I really love how it looks. It has this beautiful, old, classic, cartoony vibe to it. Maybe not like Peanuts, but maybe like Hanna-Barbera, if that makes sense. I love the colors as well. And the situations and the ridiculousness of some of the stuff that happens here is really fun. I really like it. It has this really interesting mix of things like Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera and, the Flintstones and the Smurfs and all of these different things. And I really loved it. I thought it was great. It's not that funny, but I was thoroughly entertained. So I was very happy with it. So that's it for the comic books. That was a lot. Moving on to the manga here. So we have Boys Abyss number 3, which is a phenomenal volume. I really enjoyed this one. I can't wait for volume 4. But honestly, I think I'm going to start collecting them and not reading them for a while so I can binge read some of them. Although maybe the subject matter being so heavy might mean that I don't want to binge read them. I'm not really sure yet, but I love this story. I think it's really, really good. It's really fucked up and messed up and dark and kind of this should not be happening to kids this age, but it does, and it's good, and I like it, and I think it's really, really interesting. Here's He Told Me Shy with Strangers number 5. I really enjoyed this. Number 6. I really enjoyed this. I really love this story. It's ridiculous. It's insane. And it's also really cute and wholesome. I love it. Here we have Komi number 27. They had the Among Us arc in this, and it was pretty funny. I liked it. I thought it was fun. Komi is one of those things that's like comfort food. It's like not something that is necessarily super flavorful or super like awesome and bombastic and like something that I yearn for all the time. But it's something that whenever I do have, I love it. I think it's really nice and relaxing, and it's a great kind of like touchstone for like, okay, things are going crazy around me. Let me just focus on this book and on the very simple premise and idea and execution of this book, and just enjoy my time with Komi and her friends, and with Tadano and Ojima and, you know, all of the other characters. I really like that. I find Komi to be a really important cornerstone of my manga reading. It's kind of weird. Like, most people don't think that Komi deserves that kind of praise. Like, they do like it a lot, but a lot of people end up kind of reading 14 or so volumes and then kind of getting rid of it. And I definitely understand why. It does kind of spin its wheels a lot. But at the same time, this is not a series that has to find a conclusion quickly, right? This is supposed to be something that is 3 years of Komi's life. This is a transformative work, something that is supposed to be about her transition from lonely child into loved and an appreciated adult friend, right? And I'm perfectly happy with it taking forever, taking a long time, right? I don't want it to last forever. I don't want to collect 1,000 volumes of Komi. But like, what the point is that it's nice and soft and comforting. And to me, that's really special and important because it provides me a place to reconnect with why I love manga, and a place to relax and just take it easy for a while. And I really find that to be really meaningful, right? So yeah, that's my thoughts on Komi in general. But Komi 27 was about Among Us. Here we have Bright Story number 5, a series that I love and that I'm hopefully going to finish collecting or getting caught up to this year. Here's number 6. I love these covers a lot. This finally transitions away from the twins back into her story. There's a really interesting battle sequence that happens here that has to do with her original clan. And I liked it a lot. I thought both of them were great, but on one hand, I really loved number 5 because it was a really good look at this cultural endeavor, a wedding, right? Something that is so emblematic of the human kind of like situation, the condition, but it's also so different depending on where you're from. And also the 6th one is very much like a action drama, historical fiction show like Vikings or The Last Kingdom or what's the other one? Outlander or something like that, and it's good, and I love that. I think it's so interesting that Karamori manages to balance that so well. I really love her writing style. So yeah, then I read Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Chromatic Edition number 2. This was also really fun. I like it a lot. However, again, I feel like, well, at this point, I don't really know where the story is going. This is definitely away from anything that I remember watching or reading from my brief stint into Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. But I love the colors a lot. And I feel like a lot of these are actually good chapters, but I don't think that they're necessarily the best chapters to pick. However, they do follow a very similar theme to the chapters picked for the first issue, and for the first volume. And I might go through that again, but my favorite pair of chapters here was Shota and Magic School 1 and 2, which are the 3rd and 4th chapter that is featured here. And I really like them because they're really fun. It's basically like Miss Kobayashi and Shota go to Hogwarts for a bit, and it's pretty fun. Actually, it's more like Wizards of Waverly Place when they go to the magic school for like a day, or when they do their magic test. It's more like that, but they dress up in wizarding robes like in Harry Potter, so I liked it. I thought that was fun. Fafnir and the Cursed Machine was also pretty good. And otherwise, everything else was fun, enjoyable. It was cute. It was definitely very raunchy as well. So there you go. That's Dragon Maid Chromatic Edition number 2. And finally, the last thing that I've read so far is Kuroha and Nujisuke, which is a one-shot, maybe potentially start of a series of basically an undead unluck situation. This is way before that though. Dead Unluck has like 2 years worth of publishing, I think, and this is at least 4 years old, I think. So yeah, basically there's a girl that has the best luck ever, but she feels cursed by it. And there's a guy that has the worst luck ever, and he has no feelings about it. Like, he doesn't care. He just realizes that life is tough, and he's gonna move on. And through a weird, convoluted situation, these two characters meet. They have a crazy thriller action manga moment, and then they kiss, and they move on with their lives together. And I can't wait to see what happens afterwards. I really enjoyed this story. I found it interesting to juxtapose this idea of like perfect luck, but also feeling cursed by it, because you basically feel like even though everything that happens technically is the best outcome, it is not actually one that makes her happy. So Kuroha is the one that is the girl, and she has impossibly good luck. And Nijisuke has horrible luck, but he doesn't allow that to deter him. So I really enjoy this idea, and I think that it is a very interesting concept. I mean, undead unluck is basically about that sort of same idea. So yeah, there you go. Those are my thoughts on everything that I've watched and read this month. Let me know what you guys read and watched this month. And I apologize that this is like an hour long. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys later.